Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to this week's episode of Couch Trip, where we talk about therapy for everyday life for the people who need it most. We have a great episode in store for you. If you remember, or if you didn't, last week we talked about what therapy is. And we spent about an hour defining what therapy is. And we thought it'd be a next logical step to discuss for whom therapy might be a benefit. And I can promise you that in the next 45 to 60 minutes, Eddie's going to go into detail. He's going to be dropping wisdom nuggets and giving you the tools and resources you need to move forward in your therapy journey. And we hope that you take it. So stay tuned for the next 60 minutes because this one's a keeper. Okay, my buddy, Eddie. Great to see you again, my friend, as we
Good to
record
be
this
seen,
episode. Yeah, I always say we'd rather be seen than viewed, right?
no doubt. That viewing,
So as we
I
record
don't
this
know.
episode, we're going to hope for an interruption-free recording because here in North Atlanta, we're dealing with a tornado watch and warning, and
Mhm,
there's been some
mhm.
thunderstorms running through. It's a little dark outside my office window, and you can see that both Eddie and myself are expertly lit artificially, and with the beautiful features of Zoom, we look fantastic and years younger. So thank you to our show sponsor Zoom, for which we're
Yeah.
recording this.
I can
So
hear them now going, how are they doing? God.
yeah, we are Botox free, ladies and gentlemen. Um,
No
so
plastic
so
surgery here.
yeah, no, we are all El Natural. So if we bring your recollection back to our last recorded episode, and regardless of whether or not you had the privilege or benefit of hearing it, it's really not important. But we started this conversation about what therapy was. As a matter of fact, I asked Eddie, I said, Eddie, what is therapy? And we had an awesome conversation that if you haven't listened to that episode, I suggest you find it. It's the episode that immediately precedes this one. If you're on YouTube, Apple Podcast, or Spotify, wherever you get your podcast, you'll find it there. And it was a really beautiful episode. Eddie sharing, all the information, inspiration, influence he has from years of experience helping folks in psychotherapy, and I found it to be one of the more rewarding episodes that I've been privileged enough to be party to. So definitely want to check that one out. And if you have heard it, you remember that Eddie so eloquently went through what therapy was and in a way that only Eddie can, and I'm grateful for that. And we thought, well, as a logical next step or first step, depending on how you listen to it, if we know what therapy is, perhaps you're asking yourself, or you might even ponder one day, well, for whom might therapy be helpful? And after we've kind of discussed that for a little bit, perhaps we should get into why might therapy for those people be helpful. And I think Eddie, given an opportunity, would have an opinion on where you might be able to procure such therapy. So, just kind of as a way to round out in a journalistic style the who, what, when, where, why type approach, and we thoroughly covered the what is therapy. I think Eddie, I think we'll begin by just asking that open-ended question, and I can't wait to hear your tutelage. For whom might therapy be helpful?
Yeah, that's a good question. I'm thinking back to our podcast about what therapy is. And when you and I were talking before the cameras started rolling, you mentioned that the episode winds up with me talking about the movie Private Ryan. And I'm thinking, I gotta go watch that. How in the world do you start off with what therapy is and wind up talking about Private Ryan? I gotta go watch that episode. So
That is
there's a
what you
little
call, ladies and
teaser
gentlemen,
for
a
you.
tease.
A teaser. I just threw a teaser in there without even thinking about it. So okay. All right. Who is therapy going to be helpful for? I'll start with explaining this to folks that for the most part, any random person out there, if you ask them, even what a psychotherapist is, they're not going to know. Early in my career, they'd say, "Oh, what do you do?" And I said, "I'm a psychotherapist," and they would like be like, "So you're like help people who are injured and like a physical therapist?" I'm like, "No, no, no." So I finally learned pretty quickly, don't even say that word. They don't know what it means. And I learned very early on, and this is part of one of the countless reasons I wanted to do this podcast, is I want to get the word out about therapy, because as a whole, my profession is just horrible about getting the word out there. Very few people have any idea what therapy is. Last statistic I saw, it was 3% of the population of the United States had ever seen a therapist, and some 80 or 90% of those people saw a therapist for one session. That was it. So very few people have actually been in therapy. And if you live in the South, where we do, it's hard to find people who have been in therapy. If you get outside of Metro Atlanta, you're not going to find people who have been in therapy. I often tell people, if I live in California or New York, I'd be covered up with clients, because it's almost the opposite there. If you're not in therapy, there's some sort of stigma around that. So we've got to do a better job as a profession. Part of the problem is we can't advertise the way that Joe's Plumbing advertises. It just doesn't work. So how to advertise is really tricky. So it's tough to do. So let me do
You know what?
some
And
of
even
that for
in
everybody.
addition to the advertising that we might attempt to do, which isn't real popular in the space, I'm sitting here thinking about California and New York, and I asked myself, well, what is it about California and New York? And outside of what you might immediately go to geopolitically, which isn't really important, I think what you have is what Malcolm Gladwell would call a tipping point. And I think
Hmm.
when you have the sociology of individuals in close
Right.
proximity that have experienced something of benefit and have something
Exactly.
positive to say, the lemmings of us would like,
Hmm.
well, I'd like to feel that way, learn that thing, be absolved of that condition,
Yeah.
work through
Yeah.
that challenge. And I think what's going on here in the Southeast is, we're all people, and we're all, we're, John Maxwell says, how do you know someone needs encouragement? They're breathing.
They're
So,
breathing. Yeah.
right. Well, you got
Yeah.
people in California, New York, and probably Chicago and other in Austin, maybe more progressive areas of the country where mental health is, I don't want to say it's more of a priority, but it certainly dealing with one's mental health has less of a stigma, as you put it. And there's more
Correct. Yeah.
people to say, hey, this was really helpful for me. Therefore, I go, you should meet my therapist. So I think Malcolm Gladwell
Right.
calls that a tipping point where things go from kind of out of the shadows into the mainstream, and all of a sudden you go from the if you look at the adoption of any product or service, you've got the early adopters, then you've got the early majority, the majority, and then the laggards, right? Like that's how the bell curve of
Right.
adoption works in technology. It works
Right.
in, I would imagine it works in therapy, but what are your thoughts?
Same thing. Yeah. And we're in that early stages of the early adopters still in the South, and a good chunk of the country. So to your point, we need 100 monkeys to go to therapy, and then you know we'll get some more to show up.
So we're doing our part, ladies and gentlemen, spreading the
Yeah.
word of how awesome therapy is, according to Billy and
Yeah,
Eddie.
yeah, so that you'll go. And you'll go, well, look, me, or, I don't need therapy. Well, let's find out. Who could have helped? What did you do? And a good way to think about that is, what do I do as a therapist day to day? What are the people that are coming into my office here? What are they coming in for? Number one in my practice is relationship issues. And relationship issues are like this, that the more emotional intimacy you want to have with someone, the more your mess is going to show up. So the most difficult relationships we have are with the people we are closest to and that we want to be closer to. And clients come in all the time and say, we want to feel closer. So right there, there's some education needed. I kind of like being a smart aleck, and I have a love seat. I don't have a full size couch so that people have to sit next to each other, kind of force it on them. But they go, "We want to be closer," and I go, "You're pretty close right now, you know." And they're like, "Well, no, I mean like closer." And I go, "What kind of closer?" Because what I want to help them see is what they're after is emotional intimacy, which they go, "Oh yeah, yeah, that." And I go, "You don't really want that." And they're like, "Why not?" And I said, "Because here's what emotional intimacy really is. You're going to find a part of you who thinks, feels, believes, wants to say something that another part of you wants you to not say that in any way, shape, or form." So, first of all, it's tricky to do, and you got to do some emotional gymnastics inside to even get that out. And I can just about bet you that the person you pick to share this with doesn't want to hear it either. So, why would you want to do that? You don't wanna hear it, they don't wanna hear it, okay? Well, the reason you wanna do that is because it's the only way you're going to achieve emotional intimacy to any depth, you know? We can share some emotional intimacy pretty easily if it's about something we both like. So we're all excited to be in this time and place, and so are they, and ooh, and we have the emotions of excitement and we're sharing that. So there's some emotional intimacy. And so folks aren't really sure about what they're asking for because when you explain it to them, they're not so keen on it. And if you want to be really, really, really close to somebody emotionally, you're going to have to share the things that are inside you that you absolutely don't want to share. So you're going to have to do some work with yourself in order to do that. And you have to learn, and learn is it, because to be emotionally available, as people say, to really build emotional intimacy, you have to learn to be vulnerable, which most people don't want to be. And being vulnerable says, I can take this part of me and I can present it to you in full. And when you do that against your will and knowing that they probably don't really want to hear it, it takes a lot of courage. It takes a lot of emotional upheaval actually to, and I've done this millions and millions of times in a therapist's office and with my friends. It really feels like you're just almost pulling this out of you and putting it out there, and it's it's painful. So I've been in some just really, really deep, awful emotional pain, and I've done this a few times, and I go, no wonder my clients don't want to come see me. This is what awaits them. The good news is that that is the way to get the things you want in your life. Okay? People come in and they go, I just want to be happy. I go, okay, I can make you happy. Let's talk about things that are sad in your life. How's that gonna make me happy? Part of the reason you're not happy is because you don't know how to be sad. You won't let yourself be sad. When's the last time you cried about anything? I mean, a really good cry. I mean, they don't know. And if they do know, well, I cried last week like this. Were you by yourself? Yeah. Okay. That's not the kind of crying I'm talking about. I'm talking about crying that you are letting something out that's really sad, hurtful, awful, and you're sharing that with another person. And that person knows how to take that in, not change it in any way, shape, or form, and reflect it back to you so that you can see yourself. And it comes out of mirror neurons, they're called. We need to feel seen, heard, felt. And in order to do that, we need for the other to see, feel, hear, and reflect it back.
How much of receiving therapy is not only helpful for the client or patient in this case in the way that they're processing their emotions or their feelings, but at the same time actually helps them in the relationship aspect that you're referring to be a better communicator, person,
Oh,
listener. So therapy is not only is what I'm
yeah.
hearing you say is therapy is not only to make you feel better, it's so that you can be better.
Oh, yeah. Well, you can. We'll call it better, because I'm making a judgment here that I think it's better to be emotionally vulnerable. I think it's better to be able to share emotions with people, and I'll explain this to everybody the first time they get into it is that doesn't mean you go and share all of your emotions with everybody on the street. Okay, that's not what we're after. That's just throwing up on people.
Makes you feel better, but no
You
one else.
maybe it does. It actually doesn't in the long run, because nothing was reflected back to you but get out of my face. So that just helps you squish this down, along with being emotionally available, vulnerable, able to say, "Oh, here's what I'm feeling. Here it is." Present it. You have to learn to discriminate. You have to go, okay, with this person, I can share these types of things to this degree. With this person, I can share these types of things to this degree, and on and on and on. And if you start looking at the relationships in your life, most of us will realize that there is no one in our life that we share everything with to the fullest extent. I mean, if you got somebody like that, you probably have a therapist. And most people don't do that with their therapist, which is, yeah, you got to. You just got to. Doesn't mean you walk in on session one and go, okay, here's everything, because we ain't got time for everything. And you don't know exactly what to do with it anyway. And I don't really know what you want me to do with it anyway. So we've got to learn all of that so that you learn who you can share with and what you can share with them and what you can't share with them. And you learn also too that if you share something with somebody and it doesn't go well, that doesn't mean that this part of you that doesn't want you to ever share anything is right. Okay? Because you're also going to learn things like how to take care of yourself when something like that happens, when it's something hurtful happens. It hurt me that, that person didn't care or ignored me or whatever. I was sharing something really important. That's your responsibility, not theirs. So you're learning. Do that with them, not with them. Do this with them, not with them. And you go around. And so it's very helpful to live a full life, to have a number of people in your life that you can do bits and pieces with, and don't be out there looking for friends, family, coworkers, lovers, roommates that you share everything with. You're not going to find too many of those people. Probably not, hardly any. So that's why
Right.
it takes a village
Yeah. No, I'm
to
reading.
to listen to all my crap. It takes a village. Nobody
Well,
wants to hear all of it.
no, I mean, what I'm hearing you say is that, people come in craving closeness, but maybe what they really desire is a sense of connection. And
Hmm.
you pretty clearly articulated what connection really is. It's that emotional connection that
Right.
is discovered from a place of vulnerability, which creates
Yeah.
relatability and relationship, and that closeness that we feel is really a connection on an emotional level, which I'm actually reading right now, Charles Duhigg's latest book, which is called Super Communicators. And, shameless plug, if you're an Audible or reader, go grab that. It's pretty profound. And it really talks about, learning conversation. And we've known this, whether you read Seven Habits or Covey or whoever, seek first to understand in order to be understood. There has to be a sense. Another cliche people say is no one cares what you know until they know that you care. How do you show someone you care?
And it shows somebody, yeah, and that is the talent of being able to be vulnerable enough with people and then acknowledge their vulnerability and mirror that back to them,
Well, that's right.
because you are, as you're saying, you're everybody's running around going, I want to feel more connected, a part of. When you say that, you're also saying, and I think you need to be conscious of it, I'm also looking for a deeper connection to the parts of myself, which is why we want to be seen, heard, felt, acknowledged, because then we're like, oh, okay, that's who I am. We find out who we are through relationships. And so you're you're doing everybody a really great service if you can do that in a way that's genuine, authentic, real, which means emotionally vulnerable.
Yeah, because
So,
that's the mirroring that
so
has to happen.
yeah. So anybody that, back to who should show up or who could show up or why would I show up to therapy? If you want to feel closer to people, if you want to feel closer to yourself, you want to learn to be more emotionally vulnerable, you then find a really good therapist. Why would you want to be that? Well, because most of us have some way of saying we want to live our life to the fullest. And when we say that, we generally conceptualize doing things. So I want to travel the world. I want to experience these places and these kinds of people. Well, in order to fully enjoy, you've got to be able to be emotionally vulnerable enough to enjoy, because joy is an emotion. And all emotions are all kind of the way I picture it. They're all stored away in one little kind of cramped room. And you can't open the door and pull one of them out and shut the door back. Nobody else gets out. So if you really want to be happy, you got to learn to be sad. If you want joy and ecstasy, you've got to know despair and the depths of pain. Everything works that way. You see the stars at night because of the blackness of the sky. You When you look at me or at Billy in this video, you don't just see me or Billy. You see the chair, you see the plant, you see all those things that are in there. So a really full life, a life that you could be on your deathbed if you're lucky enough to have some time to experience your death, to go, man, I did it all, man. I did it all. I was as happy and thrilled and joyous as any person could be, and I was in the pit of doom, deeper than anybody could go, and not off themselves. I know all that, which, and I have to preach this at every opportunity, which is why you want a therapist, why you absolutely have got to have a therapist who can do that, which means a therapist who has learned to do that, which means a therapist who has been on a couch in a therapist's office or in a chair for a really long time, decades, because this journey of learning yourself and then being able to share that with others, as deeply as you can with each person you're with, you're going to play around with that the rest of your life. You're never going to be an expert at it to where the kind of expert to where if you were the expert musician, they could drop a brand new piece of sheet music in front of you and you can just knock it out on the first try. I mean, it's just, there's so much to us. So you want to be closer to yourself and other people. You want to be happier in your life. Go to therapy. Things like look at your day-to-day existence, and I will bet you there are so many things that you experience in a day that you wish were different. And pull out any one of those things. And I could explain to you how a therapist could help you with that and make it different. So it's those day-to-day things, the average person on the street thinks of therapy or a therapist as working with really people who just really got some real problems, and they probably wind up in a mental hospital, or or they're close to that, or they have named problems like schizophrenia, or something like that. And most of us go, I don't have any of that. Well, you're not schizophrenic more than likely. At the same time, we could count those 15, 20 moments in your day every day to where oh,
Yeah.
you're either really mad or really sad or really hopeless or really fed up or whatever.
Right.
That's therapeutic material.
100%. And in many cases, it's my opinion that, whether it's unrecognized, unresolved, unacknowledged, however you want to put it, it's an issue. It's trauma, it's weight. I feel personally, I'm not gonna speak of anyone else, but I feel personally, in day to day, whether it's relationship with my wife, my kids, my work, my clients, whomever, there's a heaviness. There's a sense of responsibility and accountability. And I know you have an opinion on this, and I've learned a lot talking to you about it. But for those of us that accept responsibility and consider themselves accountable, there's a pressure that we put on ourselves, and it wears on you over time, and it weighs on you in a way that you don't feel so satisfied in the way you're showing up. And so a
Yeah.
conversation with a therapist, I would believe, could help to understand and perhaps even resolve that weight, that heaviness, that pressure.
Yeah.
Am I wrong?
Yeah. No. If you were presenting that to me as a client, I would start with, tell me about this pressure thing. Okay. I don't know what that is. The planet I come from, we don't have pressure. So what does that mean? And as we explore that, I'll go ahead and give you the answer. If you feel pressure, or as you called it, a weight or a heaviness, what are you really feeling? Here's the way it breaks down. The thing that causes us to feel pressure, feel anxiety, feel on edge, any of those things, we tend to call maybe anxiety of some sort. But I've come to figure out, at least in my mind, that anxiety is a kind of fear. And the kind of fear that really bugs us is the kind of fear that our nervous system registers as a threat to survival. And I'm guessing we've talked about this. If we haven't, we need to in depth in a podcast about how our nervous systems work, and why everything you do, think, feel, say, and is neural firings. We're electrical appliances. Okay. So if you're feeling pressure, if you're feeling stressed, if you're feeling anxious, um, if you're really worried, that is code for the survival part of your nervous system is registering enough of a threat that you're conscious of it. And that kind of threat in the survival part of our nervous system is all about death.
Say
This
death.
death, this could get me killed. Now, it seems just wacky to think that,
Yeah, I wasn't
oh,
thinking about that.
I'm scared to death of public speaking. Okay, you know what you're really afraid of? You're really afraid that you're going to die from it. Oh, that just sounds crazy. You know who's ever died from public speaking? Nobody. But your nervous system in survival mode, because remember that part of your nervous system works 24/7. It scans everywhere. Part of the reason you go from one room to another to get something and you forget why you went in there is because you took so much time scanning the room for threats, you forgot what you were doing because you got focused on something. So that's going on all the time. So this pressure you feel is being registered over here as a threat to your life. Because look at it this way, if you don't meet those responsibilities, if you don't live up to what you're supposed to do, if you're a complete failure at it, what's going to happen? Well, I guess, people aren't going to want anything to do with me. Then what happened? And you carry this out with anybody, it will go to exactly the same place. And my version of it, and I worked on this for a long time to, my own life. All right, well, where's that going to take me? Where's that going to take me? I'm just this totally irresponsible. I don't follow through on anything person. And the people who love me most get sick and tired of me and they leave me. Then who in the world's going to want anything to do with me? And the word's going to get out. And this is how your nervous system really does think about this stuff when you're in survival mode. Word's going to get out. Everybody's going to know. It's going to be the lead story on every news network everywhere. Eddie is just worthless. I mean, look what he did to his family, his friends. Look at how he let everybody down. Finally, the people at work learned about it, and he's out of a job. And every time he tries to get a job, people go, "You're that guy. I'm not hiring you." So, what's going to happen? I'm going to be a homeless person. Okay. How well am I going to do as a homeless person? Not well at all. I don't know anything about trying to get some food if I don't have any money. It becomes the story of trading places, with Eddie Murphy and Dan Aykroyd. I mean, he's shoving things down in his Santa suit, needing some food to carry with him. So I'm going to become a homeless person, and that's not going to be good because I'm probably not going to live very long as a homeless person, and somebody's probably going to beat me up and try to get my little piece of blanket that I found somewhere, and so I'm going to wind up dying on under a bridge somewhere,
I choose to
and.
believe the scene in which they're on the yacht in the Caribbean and he's saying, "Looking good, Billy Ray.
Look
Feeling good,
good,
Lewis."
I mean, that's where you can wind up. But our nervous systems go to extremes because not only am I going to die under that bridge, I'm so worthless that the other homeless people are going to step over my dead, lifeless body. They're not even going to care. And I stopped right there for a long time. I thought, well, that's it. And then I went, no, 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 that's not it. What's going to happen to my body? The county coroner knows who I am. When they come out and start to identify me, they go, we're not wasting our time on this. They're gonna leave. The vultures are gonna show up. They're gonna start picking at me. They're gonna go, "Oh God, this is nasty."
So we're
They're
having
gonna
fun with this.
leave. Yeah.
But
I'm
the
gonna
reality is you distilled something that I didn't know where you were going to go, but I was just genuinely trying to create an example, another example for which someone might seek a therapist to say, hey, I'm a
Right.
professional. I've got two kids under 10. I got a wife that I want, to revere me and feel good about being married to me. And so, um, you're right. I mean, why do I put pressure on myself? Because I feel like, holy cow, what if I'm unaccountable? What if I
What
don't come
if
through? What
I
if I don't?
don't?
You're right. But I never would have
Right.
thought about that had you not given it the example
Right.
you did.
Nobody does because everybody stops at, well, then I'm not going to be happy, or they're not going to be happy, or even I might get divorced, or my kids aren't going to want anything to do with me. But they'll hit one or two of those,
But
and then they stop.
yeah, yeah.
And
But
then
there's
I
even like
go, and then what? And then what? And after 10 then whats, they're dead on the street and nobody cares.
And is it true, or is the intention of that line of questioning to kind of create some context and almost, I don't want to say humor, but almost a ridiculousness to the initial stress and
Hmm.
aggravation anyway?
Yeah, well, to show you that, first of all, this is what you're really afraid of from the point of view of your nervous system in survival mode that controls everything when it says we're in survival mode. Okay? Because the more you get into survival mode, the less blood flow you have to your frontal lobe, which is where your thought, logic, rational be. You don't do that. You don't need that if you're in survival mode. You don't need to go, ooh, that's a snake. Well, it's a poisonous snake. That snake is about 3.8 feet from me. It can strike at this quick. You don't need any of that. Get out. Okay. So I want people to understand that again, we're electrical appliances, and a huge part of the struggle you're having, whether it's a relationship issue, whether it's worried about your job at work, whether it's you're not sure of your performance, you're raging at people in their cars because they're
Right.
not behaving correctly. You want to strangle somebody because of something they said or did. You're watching TV and screaming at the TV. Any and all of those things come back to this. Your nervous system is unregulated. You're in survival mode, and you're not going to die, but your nervous system doesn't know that.
Okay. So to recap and to make sure that I heard you correctly, Eddie, and I appreciate it, is, we've talked about for whom therapy might be helpful. In the first place we went quite logically was relationships and connection, closeness and intimacy. We talked about emotional availability, learning conversations, being vulnerable in a way to be relatable and to show,
Right.
in your words, mirroring, to show that, a real sense of care and sense of consideration. And if it's been said, I think, therefore I am, I would argue, I think it's, I'm seen, therefore I am. Uh,
I'm seen. I can see
yeah.
myself.
And
I
then we got
exist.
into
Yeah.
to the conversation of pressure and anxiety and obligation and fight or flight and what's going on from a neural perspective in that survival mode and how that changes our perception of ourselves and our
Mhm.
performance and all that other stuff, which is important. And that goes back to that survival reflex. And then,
Right.
but there's one thing where I'd like to kind of go next, which I think is also likely to be a pretty popular reason someone might see a therapist. And I don't know that we may have uncovered the surface of it, but we didn't really explain it. And that would be like depression or maybe
Hmm.
addiction. So
Yeah.
if I'm not anxious and I'm not suffering from relationship issues, I'm just generally lost and depressed
Yeah.
or perhaps
Uh,
addicted. Let's go
if
there.
either one, you can name 50 different afflictions, and I'm going to take you to the same place, that you're not able to access all the parts of yourself that you need to access, you need to hear from, you need to listen to. Most depression that winds up in the therapist's office isn't like a clinical depression to where you just can't get up out of bed. People come in and they tell me they're really, really depressed. And I go, how'd you get up and dressed this morning? Well, I mean, I get up and dressed every morning. And you go to work, yeah. And you made disappointment, yeah. And you fed your kids, yeah. And you healthy. I don't know that that's depression. I think it's the kind of depression that the word literally means depressing. You're depressing parts of yourself that are screaming to get out. The cure for depression is expression to that emotional vulnerability, that sharing, you know, learning how to do that. And it is a skill. Yeah, there's all this, therapy is all about healing your trauma and you work really hard to take. Yeah, but it's learning skills. Here's how you talk to somebody. Here's how you talk to yourself. These are the rules you follow. You do it this way. All the time I'm using dance lessons or piano lessons. If you're coming to me for that, if you've been banging on a piano your whole life and you finally find out that nobody thinks it's music except you, then you come in and you go, "Oh, I want to learn to play the piano better," And I said, "Well, show me your piano playing." And I go, "Okay, put this finger here, don't put it there." And you'll put it there and you go, "Oh, wow, that sounds better." And then you'll immediately put it back over there. And I'll go, "No, put it over here." That's therapy. That's all it is.
I love it.
Put your foot here, not there.
Right.
Just put it there and see what happens. Oh, that's better. Yeah, yeah. Okay, go practice that. Go do that again. Go do that
I,
again. It's
I'm
a
reminded.
skill, so you don't want to be depressed. It's a skill. Even if it's, I just don't feel like getting out of bed in the morning. Okay, don't worry about getting out of bed in the morning. You wake up and you're like, I don't want to get out of bed in the morning. I'm going to help you learn. First of all, which part said that? And who did it say it to? Because in my way of working with clients, you should constantly be in conversation with yourself. So it's not, I don't want to get up in the morning. It's, I don't want you to get up. You don't want me to get up? No, I don't want to go out there. Because if you get up, I gotta go out there. I don't want to go. And again, you're going to learn to be emotionally vulnerable so that not only the other can see you, but you can see yourself. When you do that, you begin to see why staying in bed becomes the best option of all the options you can think of. And when you hear from other parts of you and you hear from yourself and they hear from you, they get it why you don't want to get up. You get it why they do want to get up. And then you can work together to pick another option that is not just your best option, this part of you, because that means you're ignoring everybody else and they're not happy about that. So the worn out example I use is if I'm going out to eat, I don't go, where do I want to eat? I go, where do you guys want to eat? And I'll hear two, three, four different ideas from four different parts of me. And then they'll start this conversation. And then they'll come together and form a consensus, not a compromise. Don't compromise. And then we'll go eat.
It
So,
reminds me of the what is therapy conversation where we ended with the beautiful 15 minutes on kindness. And
uh-huh,
what I heard you just
yeah,
say is that, or what I choose to believe I heard you say was that therapy is being kind to yourself, to give yourself the tools and resources and
yeah.
kind of that you need to
Hmm.
process and deal with the things that are perhaps taken away from what would normally be the full human existence.
Yeah, absolutely. Every single client I have, and every time I'm in therapy, bottom line, what I'm learning, what I'm teaching them, what they're learning is to be kinder, more curious, and compassionate. that's it. It doesn't matter why they came in here. And I've never had anybody come in and I go, "Oh, what brings you to therapy?" Well, I want to be kinder and more compassionate, to myself and other people. I want to have some more curiosity about why these crazy people bug me. That nobody wants curiosity. They know. Yeah, and so I'm gonna teach you some skills to cultivate curiosity and kindness and compassion because there's really not a time or a place to not be that. And even if somebody has a gun to your head, kindness and compassion towards yourself, if you can, towards the other,
Yeah.
even if you have to kill them to prevent them from killing you. Can you do that from a place of kindness and compassion? That was the scene in Private Ryan, I think. Is that what I was talking about last time?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. How do you do that? So that's you go, do I need therapy? Well, are you one of the most kindest, curious, and compassionate people in the world? No. Okay. Therapy could help you be more of all that. So anybody who wants to be that, if you want to be that, go find a good therapist who has learned the skills of doing that and therefore can teach you. And no matter what your issue, affliction, problem is, you're not going to fix it without regulating your nervous system as part of your nervous system that sees these things as a threat. They're not snakes, they're sticks. Okay. So I got to help you learn to see that. And then you're not going to change anything worthwhile without curiosity, kindness, and compassion. So I'm going to teach you those things. You want to be a jazz improvisationist? Okay, learn the scales. Mm. So come in here, see me, sit with me. I'll teach you the scales. Once you learn the scales, then we're going to learn to play some songs the way the greats played it.
Yeah.
Like the great painters sat in front of the great paintings and was it Van Gogh or drew the mathematical grids, showing this is where you put this is where you put you you've got to have those skills if you want to do those things. You can't approach somebody who's upset with you, not happy with you, without regulating your nervous system to begin with. If you go in there like, here we go again, okay, it's over right then. Don't even go. It's not going to turn out well. So you got to regulate that nervous system. It's a stick. It's not a snake, and it's actually someone who loves you and that you love. So you got to be able to see that, and you got to be curious enough about what it is they're not happy about. You got to be kind enough about what it is they're not happy about. You got to be compassionate enough to understand. Oh my God, no wonder you're not happy about that. Nobody would be.
We started this conversation talking about the lack of prevalence for therapy where we live, and whether that's real or perceived. I guess it's not important, but we
Very
also
real.
mentioned that there's parts of the country and likely the world where it's more popular and more of a prevailing treatment for an outcome that most people, I would think, would find attractive in many ways. And then we touched on the areas, that if you were asking yourself, geez, would I be a good candidate to seek out a therapist? I think we covered some really good pieces of information that hopefully enlighten some people. And again, I'm brought back to the, how do we bridge the gap between where we are here outside of Atlanta to maybe where they are in Northern California or the Northeast of the United States? And I think it comes down to awareness. And I think awareness
Mm-hmm.
precedes progress. That's my opinion, not
Yep.
Eddie's, but
Yep.
but it's it's
Yeah,
it's
it's
the
mine
idea that if
too. Yeah.
but if
People
we
have
if
to
we can.
know. They have to know about therapists and therapy, and they have to know what it really is, and they have to know about it in
And
such
what
a
it isn't.
way that they can apply it to their own life and go, it would
Right.
help me. I mean,
Right.
I
And that's what we're doing here.
yeah, it's big. It's a big part of why I do this podcast. That I dream of a world that I'll never see, to where somebody can say, "What do you do for a living?" And I go, "I'm a psychotherapist." And they go, "God, that is great." Boy, the therapist I had was awesome and absolutely changed my life for the better. I so appreciate what you guys do for a living.
Well, if you don't know what you want, you can't ask for it. And I think it was nice that we were able to right there kind of quantify
That's
and
what I want.
well, think
Yeah.
about it. There's nothing wrong with that.
It
That's
is.
a great
No,
goal to have, and it's
it's
why
what
we
I
get together.
want. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm incredibly passionate about it. And I'm so thankful for you, Billy, and this podcast and the people who tune in and get out there and spread the world and spread the word, because we can heal people, we
Exercise the demons.
demons, yes, sir. I grew up
Well, listen,
Southern Baptist.
we're gonna keep coming. We're gonna keep delivering as much awareness as we possibly can, and hopefully one by one remove some stigma behind psychotherapy and therapy in general, and hopefully it's my hope that in the process of educating people and sharing with people the what therapy is and for whom it might be helpful and where they can get it and why they might want it, they realize, you know what, that sounds a lot like me. And I really appreciate Eddie and Billy talking, for an hour a week about how I can deal with some of these things and develop the skills and be provided with the tools and resources to process these things and exercise these things and learn these things and be a better, kinder, more curious and more compassionate human to myself and to others. And that's why we come together. And again, this is Eddie and Billy's perception on what therapy is and for whom it can benefit. And this has been another episode of the Couch Trip. And we ask that you keep tuning in. And if you found this beneficial, don't keep us a secret. Share it with some friends and perhaps go back to some earlier episodes and see what we've been talking about and why we're talking, and we'll keep showing up again each week to bring you as much as we can to spread the word and create awareness and remove stigma. And who knows, Atlanta might be the hotbed for psychotherapy in 2025 because of the work that Eddie's doing right here on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcast, and wherever you receive your spoken or viewed word. So this has been another episode of the Couch Trip. And on behalf of Eddie Reece, I'm Billy Courtright, and we would like to express sincere gratitude for the time that you spent with us. Hopefully, it was helpful, beneficial. Maybe you even learned something. And if you need any further assistance on where you might find a good therapist or what questions you might ask in interviewing a therapist or where to begin, just hit us up in the show notes or in the comments or email us, Eddie@couchtrip.co, and we will make sure that we get you that information because, again, it makes it incredibly worthwhile and fulfilling for us. So, Eddie, any final words?
No, man, I'm worded out. It was awesome. Thanks.
Awesome. Well, hey, guys, we'll see y'all next week. Stay tuned. Bye-bye.
Bye.